What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Now, to be honest, this is a Canadian holiday that I have never heard of before, and apparently, this actually just happened. It happens on September 30th every year. And even from the very little I can see so far, this is a very serious topic, which, usually this channel is pretty lighthearted, honestly, some of the things I look and react to, but I think it's important to learn about these types of things as well. Very important. And this has to do with from what I can see, a very dark history of Canada's Indigenous communities and their relationship to the Canadian government and other things like that and their experiences. So this was really interesting to me. I had never heard of this before. There's an entire day, a Canadian holiday, devoted to this, and I can tell just from the name alone, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. That is powerful. I'm not exactly sure yet what this truth is, or what is being reconciled, or apologized for, or tried to make right and make peace over something. That's what I interpret when I see the name of this holiday. So let's learn a little more here. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, sometimes TNR Day, originally and still known as Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day. Okay. Do people wear orange shirts? Does that symbolize something? Or maybe that has a deeper meaning I don't know about? Is a Canadian holiday to recognize the legacy of the Canadian Indian residential school system. Recognize the legacy of the Canadian Indian residential school system. I am not exactly sure what that means or what the legacy that they are referring to is. But I get that's kind of the whole point here, isn't it? I just don't understand from that sentence alone. But we're recognizing something. Oh, it's a statutory holiday. Oh, here we go. Orange Shirt Day first established as an observance in 2013. Not all that long ago. I mean, it's just been going on 10 years as a national holiday. As part of an effort to promote awareness and education of the residential school system and the impact it has on Indigenous communities for over a century. The impact that a school system had on Indigenous communities. Just going off that also doesn't make too much sense to me. Like, what happened? What did this residential school system do? Or what happened here? The impact of the residential school system has been recognized as a cultural genocide and continues to this day. It's been recognized as a cultural genocide. That is pretty serious words. I don't know how else to say it. What exactly happened? I'm a little confused, and my interest is piqued. The use of an orange shirt as a symbol was inspired by the accounts of Phyllis Jack Webstat, whose personal clothing, including a new orange shirt, was taken from her during her first day of residential schooling and never returned. The orange shirt is thus used as a symbol of the forced assimilation of Indigenous children that the residential school system enforced. The forced assimilation of Indigenous children. What I need more details on this. Children were forced to be a part of a residential school system, like Indigenous children were forced to be part of a school system. Why? And on its face, children going to school. You might see why I'm a bit confused. I'm gonna read more and learn more, but as of now, I'm a bit confused. Like, children being told to go to school is not, inherently a bad thing just on its face. So something else has happened here. And it was forced. That's a big thing. It's a forced assimilation of children to a school system. Background. Shortly after the, oh, you know what? Instead of reading this too much, let's go into a video, honestly. I found that there were some videos covering this topic. I think that would be kind of a nice way to have this summarized to me. I got some videos here talking about what the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, what the history is, what it's for, how it's celebrated. So let's take a look at that.
September 30th marks the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Today, also known as Orange Shirt Day, is our chance to reflect on the intergenerational legacy of residential schools and the need to continue the reconciliation process.
Okay. So this holiday is an acknowledgement, it is an apology, it is all of that, of what happened.
In the words of Phyllis Webstad, creator of Orange Shirt Day and residential school survivor, we wear an orange shirt to honor the children who survived the Indian residential schools and to remember those who didn't.
The indigenous children that survived the residential schools. What on earth was happening at those schools? That's the confusing part to me. It's like children sent to schools and then mass tragedy. What on earth happened there?
From the 1870s to 1996, Canadian governments removed more than 150,000 Indigenous children from their families and communities and forced them into residential schools.
Oh my God. Okay. It's starting to become more clear to me. This is the beginning. From 1870 to 1996. 1996? That's not that long ago. Goodness. Canadian governments removed 150,000 Indigenous children from, like forced them to what? Go to school? Like, oh my God. This is becoming more and more dark for sure. Loss of their, okay. Forced them to go to these schools. So that's already like, this is getting disturbing. Children, 150,000 forced from their family to go to the school.
Children suffered cultural alienation, loss of their Indigenous languages and identity, and severe abuse.
What was the purpose of this school? Like, why was the Canadian government doing this? I think they use the words assimilation. Is it to like try to assimilate the Indigenous children to be more like the rest of Canada, basically? Like to give up their own culture and their values and their language and like transform them by force into being more of like what the Canadian government wants a Canadian citizen to be? Is that's like, am I going out on a stretch here or is that about it?
Estimates are that more than 6,000 Indigenous children died in residential schools in Canada.
How?
The city has contributed to the erasure and discrimination of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations and urban Indigenous communities by not reflecting these nations and communities within our planning processes, civic facilities, or acknowledging their rights and title to their lands.
Yeah, okay. I mean, there's a couple of parallels to when I think about Native Americans, the original inhabitants of the United States, where obviously there were the original inhabitants of the land I'm on right now, people who originally lived here that we refer to as Native Americans that at one point or another were forced out of the land that they lived in, and nowadays they're just forced to these smaller protected communities, and they certainly struggle with proper representation and all that stuff. So that I understand some of this through the American Indigenous people kind of struggle, but there's nothing quite like this event, this forced assimilation into the school system. This is a real tragedy, but it's horrible. There's some kind of shining light here in the sense that it is very like upstanding and like respect, like deep respect I have for Canada for acknowledging this, not trying to hide it. Like, it's this horrible thing that happened, and it happened. Acknowledging it, creating a day of awareness around it, that's a start. That's something. That's good.
In 2014, we became a city of reconciliation and are enacting 27 of the 94 Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action relating to municipalities.
Okay.
We continue to strengthen our government-to-government relationship with the Musqueam Indian Band, Squamish Nation, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation.
Oh, I imagine after an event like this, children were forced to go to this school where they were trying to be brainwashed and give up their culture, and some of them died. It is tough to repair a relationship after that, to be honest.
We are deeply grateful for the nations who have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. We are also grateful for the contributions of urban Indigenous community members, past, present, and future, in shaping our city.
Right.
On September 30th and every day, we commemorate and honor every Indigenous child, family, and community subjected to harm caused by residential schools, and call on you to join in our commitment to advancing the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action.
Wow, okay. Oh, that was made by the City of Vancouver. Very nice. That gave me a lot more information on this. And I found this little 30-second sort of explanation as well that I thought would be good for me to see and understand.
In 1831, the residential school system was formed.
1831, almost 200 years ago.
Take a moment to think what was all happening in that time period. When the first flight was taken, children were being abused for speaking their own language. They were isolated for months from their families when men already walked on the moon. While human rights...
What? Yeah, I mean, this is, it's comfort. It would be comforting a little bit to think, okay, this was such a long time ago. Times were different. People were cruel. There wasn't so much like law and like enforcement of law and reason, but this makes it sound like this has happened like somewhat in the recent day. Not not literally the modern day, but not all that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Children taken from their families, abused. So this was just some kind of strange ploy by the Canadian government to try to assimilate the Indigenous children into, to become more, I don't know what the word for it is, give up their culture and, become how the government thinks a Canadian should be and speak and act and what language they should speak and how they should behave. Wow.
Isolated for months from their families when men already walked on the moon. While human rights were established, children were experiencing sickness and sometimes death. September 30th is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
So were the conditions just so bad? The care and, the kids are being separated from their families. No one's taking care of them. The people who are trying to, brainwash or reassimilate them don't care much about them and don't like them. So there's abuse going on and probably negligence and leading to death of children. And this is just this is so disturbing. It is sad, but again, real and important to acknowledge.
We pay respect to their legacy on this day and always.
Whoa. Wow, I didn't realize how deep, how tragic this was, I think. That's the biggest thing I'm kind of realizing now. Okay, so this is from, I think this is a news coverage from maybe last year. What do they call it? Orange Shirt Day? Yeah, I see people with orange shirts. And National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Yes, so let's see some of this as well. I think some of the Indigenous affected even give some comments and some words.
A list so long it takes dozens of people to carry. The names of more than 4,000 children who never returned home from residential schools.
Whoa. That's deep. That's dark. 4,000 children. Imagine someone coming in, you're just living your life, someone coming in, forcibly taking your children from you, and they're going off to some school to be told that their culture is no good, that your culture is no good, and you're going to behave a totally different way and abandon all your culture and principles that your family gave you. Just imagine it. You can't even imagine. You can't imagine. Like, this is true horror.
These are the documented cases. The total number of deaths is believed to be much higher. In their memory, the first Indigenous Governor General placed tiny shoes on stage, followed by the Prime Minister. They watched as survivors told their stories.
I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your throat muscles force me down to your stomach. Your throat muscles squeeze my happiness, squeeze my dreams, squeeze my native voice.
Holy, so these are people who were children who experienced this? The forced assimilation into the residential school. This is them. They've grown, they survived, and they are now grown adults. Like, and talking about what they were thinking at the time. Unbelievable, honestly.
I believe your stories, and I believe in reconciliation as part of the healing journey.
The prejudicial policies that forced more than 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children into these government-funded institutions called out.
I saw the impact on my community. I felt the void left by the children.
It's a lot to take in, honestly. It's a lot to even like try to take in and understand and process and try to like my knee-jerk reaction is trying to empathize with the people who are affected by this, but it's just it's even too much to even put yourself in that situation.
It's taken decades for the country to face the damage done and its enduring impact.
This important work of reconciliation is not a one-day affair.
Yeah.
As we say, it will take us several generations.
Oh man. It's nice to see, trying to inject some positivity into this. It's nice to see that this is like an event that the Indigenous people affected seem to be appreciative of the effort of this day and this acknowledgement and taking responsibility for this tragic event, and seem willing to at least start the healing process, as they said.
September 30th, I am simply asking you to extend the same courtesy to survivors that you are used to doing for others.
Residential school intended to assimilate us and destroy our culture. We are still here. We will survive.
Resilient.
God, that's not a history of Canada that I ever knew about. Not something Americans know. Like, Americans definitely don't know about this. I go out of my way to learn and react to Canada, and I had never heard of this. So, I mean, there's no getting around it. It's horrible. It's a horrible stain on Canada's history. America has horrible stains on our history. This is something that just happens throughout history and, horrors of this world and what humans are capable of. But it's, I don't know, it's nice to see that Canada is making an effort now. Like, there's only so much control, there's only so much you can do at this point to try to mend the situation. And it feels like Canada is trying to do that. So that's nice.
Even as waves of trauma ripple through generations.
I'm an intergenerational residential school survivor. I know what's happening, and I can feel the pain of all the other children that have been hurt because of this.
Indigenous youth her age are still being ripped away from their families, more now in foster care than at the height of the residential school era.
What? Why would Indigenous children why are they being ripped away from their parents and family now? This was in 2022. I don't understand that. I don't understand.
All I want everyone to know is just to understand and reflect and just be able to learn from all of the past mistakes, and that we can all take a step forward in reconciliation.
One leading to a future that breaks the cycles of the past. Olivia
Yeah.
Stefanovich, CBC News.
Okay. All right. And I think I have one more here. Canada marks holiday for Indigenous reconciliation. Yes. I think this is the last clip I have that's going to give some perspective on this.
Protesters took to the streets of Canada's most populous city, Toronto, on Thursday,
Oh.
marking the country's inaugural holiday in honor of the lost children and survivors of Indigenous schools.
Yeah.
Every single day, all of us are just fighting to get our culture back, and it was unfair of us to lose it.
The National Day of
yes.
Truth and
Yes.
Reconciliation was established in June by Prime Minister Justin
I like now that I'm kind of soaking it in more, I like the truth part. The reconciliation part, of course, is great and makes sense. The truth part, that's more substantial thinking about it now. The truth, that's almost the hard part, is admitting this as the truth of what happened. And it's kind of like probably a spot of shame, like maybe for some Canadians, you know? And admitting it and acknowledging it, that's kind of the truth part of this, which is important. It's important.
Trudeau, who is facing major backlash for going on vacation instead of attending several key events.
Trudeau, come on vacation. I mean, that's literally the American presidents. I feel like, on average, are on vacation like 50% of the time, honestly.
Marking the holiday. The holiday was created after more than 1,000 unmarked graves were found near 2 schools earlier this year.
Wow.
On Thursday, protesters wore shirts reading "Every Child Matters."
Wait, when was this?
Earlier this year, created after more than 1,000 unmarked graves were found near 2 schools.
This was created. When was this created? Was this recent or? First time was in 2013, Orange Shirt Day. Oh, in 2021, it became the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So did it change names? It was Orange Shirt Day, and now it's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Just for this, like the third year? Okay, got it. I want to read a little bit more about exactly why were there so many deaths? What exactly was the purpose of all this? Why did it happen? What were they trying to accomplish? Prime Minister John A. Macdonald was faced with a country with disparate cultures and identities and wanted to forge a new Canadian identity to unite the country and ensure its survival. There it is. That's how it begins, huh? It was Macdonald's goal to absorb the First Nations into the general population and extinguish their culture. My God. Oh my God. That's sick. John A. Macdonald did that? Prime Minister John A. Macdonald. He thought it was like, what, going to help Canada? And he formed this master plan where he's like, I want the First Nations to be absorbed into the general population. Oh boy. 1 year later, Davin reported that only residential schools could separate Aboriginal children from their parents and culture and cause them to be, quote, merged and lost within the nation. What? Oh my God, this is sick. This is sick. Okay, so Macdonald got someone named Davin who said, okay, the only way we can do this is legally is by forcing them into residential schools. The children. Okay. In 1883, the government began funding Indian residential schools across Canada. When the separation of children from their parents was resisted, which of course it was, and rightfully so, the government responded by making school attendance compulsory in 1894 and empowered the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to seize children from reserves and bring them to residential schools. They empowered the police, the Mounties, unfortunately, to legally, they can take children out of their homes. Just grab them, take them out of their homes, force them, I don't know, by force, at gunpoint? This is crazy. And force them to schools where they'd be re-assimilated. When parents came to take their children away from the schools, the pass system was created, banning Indigenous people from leaving their reserve without a pass from an Indian agent. So they're just doing everything in their power, using the legal system to separate children from the families and make it hard to get them back. Conditions at the schools were rough. Okay, here we go. This is something I was interested in. The conditions at the school. As schools were underfunded, and the infectious disease of tuberculosis was rampant. Over the course of the system's existence, more than a century, 150,000 children were placed in residential schools. Approximately 3,200 children resulted in death, the deaths of approximately 3,200 children. 2.1% died. Wow, could be as high as 6,000. This is so sad. Most recorded deaths took place before 1950s, and it was mostly because of tuberculosis. So that was a big part of all these deaths. I was wondering about that. They talk about a lot of deaths and casualties during this, and they just had such bad, conditions, and no one really cared about their health, that literally children just died of disease and weren't allowed back with their families. Students also died from other causes. Diseases, fire, accident, drowning, hypothermia. Some of it occurred when they were trying to run away. Wow, some schools had mortality rates of 30% or more. Many deaths result of neglect. That's something I assumed as well. Wow. This is crazy. Okay, so to wrap this up, this is kind of wrapping it back into the modern time with the formation of Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or Orange Shirt Day. I guess everyone wears their orange shirt, kind of in solidarity. In 1986, the United Church of Canada apologized for its role in the residential school system. The Anglican Church also apologized in 1992. Pope Benedict expressed sorrow. Wow. Justin Trudeau asked the Pope to apologize. Wow. In 1991, the Royal Commission of Aboriginal Peoples was formed to investigate this. Wow. Wow. Prime Minister Stephen Harper apologized in 2008. So basically, as time has gone on, there's been more acknowledgement of this, more accountability, more truth, and the attempt at reconciliation. But what can you even say? I didn't quite know what I was getting into today when I heard about this, wanted to learn about this holiday, but dang. To say it's sad would be selling it short. It is tragic. It is unforgivable to those people who were directly involved in it, but I do believe now in the present time, years and years and years later, now, it is nice that Canada and Canadians are putting in this effort to be like, that was horrible, objectively horrible, that happened, and let's try to make peace with it, and let's acknowledge those who were affected and passed and died, and who are affected to this day, and that's great. That's great that that's happening. That effort is continuing today and onwards. That's a really nice part of this. So I think with that thought, I will wrap this up. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment with what your opinion and your thoughts on Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and this whole crazy story, history. Thoughts on that, please. And if you're interested in more videos like this, usually a little more positive and happy and lighthearted, feel free to subscribe for more of me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.